Let's bring in Bryan Clark now. He's a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute and has years of experience with defense and military strategy. Mr. Clark, always good to have you on the program. Let's start with the nuclear situation because that is of immediate, imminent concern right now. What do you make of the status of this plant right now and some of the possible plans to get us out of this danger?
Yeah, Marnie, the nuclear power plant is currently being manned by Ukrainians that have been kept there by the Russian troops. So they've been forced to stay there 24/7 to operate the plant. Most have not been home in weeks or months, and they've not rotated very many of them out. So they've been stuck there trying to maintain the plant without the benefit of rest, time away, or parts and supplies they need to keep the plant operating. So it's not surprising that eventually the plant would suffer some kind of material problem that would force it to shut down because it's not being adequately supported. So that's the challenge that they've got right now, is trying to just keep it operating under these conditions.
Well, and no one wants to see a nuclear disaster. At least you hope that Russia doesn't want to see a nuclear disaster. What's the best case scenario? Because it appears that both sides are coming to the table with some sort of negotiation to avoid anything disastrous.
Right. So Russia's been using this as a fire base. So they know that this is a target that the Ukrainians will not strike. The U.S. doesn't want anybody to strike it. So they've been using this to launch attacks against Ukraine, which is the main problem that it presents. I think what we're likely to see is a negotiated settlement where Russia, who has the necessary parts and materials to support the plant because it's a Russian design, could get those parts and materials in, rotate out some of the crew members that are keeping it operating, and Ukraine would probably agree to some kind of corridor that allows the Russians to be able to do that without being attacked by Ukrainian troops. That's probably the best case scenario to try to get the plant back up and operating and return it to a safe condition.
And Bryan, worst case scenario, if the cooling systems start to shut down, if it takes on any shelling?
Well, if it does get attacked, or if there's an explosion or some kind of casualty there that results from the Russians using it, yeah, then you could end up with some kind of accident, where the consequences may not be that severe. But again, this is an older plant that has a lot of the same characteristics as some of the other older plants that are in Ukraine. And we saw with Chernobyl, that if you don't properly maintain the plant and you have problems with the cooling system, things can get out of control pretty quickly.
Yeah, the global leaders are watching that closely tonight, and I think really just every human being watching the potential disaster that could unfold. Let's talk about these troops. So Putin increasing his army by 13%. It's 137,000 troops. His goal is to do so by the end of the year. I think it's pretty likely to assume he's doing it because he took some major hits the last 6 months. Is it going to be difficult for him to find willing volunteers, given the fact the Pentagon is estimating about 80,000 Russian troops have been killed so far?
Yeah, he will. And so one of the challenges he has is he doesn't want to have a big troop call up to avoid the perception back home that things are going badly. He's trying to manage this news. And in Russia, the propaganda has been going very strong to say that things are going well and that this is all as per plan. So what it looks like they're planning to do is use the usual call up of conscripts that they do in the springtime and maybe move that up a little bit earlier to try to get those troops into the field more quickly without having to do a special call up of personnel. Because they know that there's not a lot of necessarily volunteers and they don't want to do a big conscription drive today. So I think that's what they're looking at, is it's a little bit of a shell game. They're going to bring up these troops earlier than they would normally bring them up, but they'll call that an augmentation of the existing force that's in Ukraine today.
Bryan, you specialize in strategy. So what insight do we have now, 6 months into this war, that we didn't have at the beginning about Russia's capabilities militarily, their strategy, and some of the targets they continue to strike with this train this week?
Yeah, so Russia still, even though they've depleted a lot of their precision weapons stores, they still have the ability to cause a lot of damage. They have a lot of capacity. Even though they've lost a lot of troops, they still have a large number of troops in the field, as you saw from the graphic. So I think one thing that we've learned is Russia is going to persist, and it seems like they're clearly trying to drive this into a more protracted conflict that'll last into the winter.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.